she lives in Nevada.
Good evening, all. We will call this meeting of the Ordinance Committee on February 26, 2018 at 6:48 p.m. We'll take roll call. Mr. Van Truren? Here. Mr. Miller?
Present.
Mr. Janik?
Here.
Chair is present. Mr. Winarski?
Present.
Mr. Cowger?
Here.
Mr. Nahorn?
Present.
Thank you. And do we need a thing to excuse Mr. Patak?
Why don't we go ahead and excuse him?
Mr. Winarski?
I'd like to make the motion to excuse Auditor Patak. He has a letter on file.
Sorry.
He does have a letter.
I'm trying to find the thing here. Do I have a second? Sorry. Mr. Cowger.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Thank you. He is excused. We have one item on the agenda tonight. It is A-18-15, amending Chapter 192 of the ACO to adopt Sections 718.80 through 718.95 of the Ohio Revised Code as Sections 192.45 through 192.60 of that chapter. This was submitted to us by Mr. Ramsey. Would you like to speak to this, please?
Yes, thank you. This is an ordinance that we were provided by our, the template anyway was provided by our representative, Frost Brown Todd, which is the law firm that was handling the challenge of the state mandated local municipal income tax laws. We're trying to hold off on this for as long as possible because, as you know, we're challenging that process and challenging those ordinance or those statutes which require these changes to our municipal ordinances. We're going to have to pass them. The deadline was basically to get them passed by the 24th. I don't want to speak for Frank. I think he was just really busy, and by the time we could actually get this in writing out to everybody, we talked briefly last week and tried to get this on the agenda for today as fast as possible. Really what this does is it talks about the administration of the profit tax for the businesses and kind of how they can elect the way to report that and those sorts of things. It's fairly nuanced and fairly complicated. The template, as I said, came from Frost Brown Todd, and then that was forwarded on to Frank Carlson, and then that's the document that you have in front of you here today, basically. So let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. Are there any questions from council? Mr. Winarski?
If I could, please. Thank you. Mr. Chair. My understanding is that it's been before the court and the court did not rule favorably.
That is correct.
And that happened Saturday, so I don't think we're the only ones who are getting this on our agenda tonight, and I'm pretty confident the state should be understanding. It stinks, and first of all, I should have started with the tip of the cap to you and your department for all your work and your diligence on this. It was well done, and I thank you. It's just a darn shame we got skunked in the courts.
Yeah.
And
There's, I can talk about it now. I was gonna talk about that whenever I did my report for the evening, but I'll just do it right now. Yeah, the judge had ruled against our side. It's us, along with several other communities that had litigated that, had brought that challenge. He had ruled against that, so right now I'm waiting to hear back from the lawyer on what they recommend on our follow-up strategy would be. I don't know if we're supposed to appeal, those sorts of things. So I'll have a little bit more information for you guys in the coming weeks, but the short news, yeah, you're correct.
thank you, Treasurer.
Sure.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winarski. Any other comments or questions from council? Mr. Winarski?
I'll motion to take this to the floor of council.
Mr. Ramsey, do we probably, based off of what we had heard over the weekend, do we need to have the emergency attached with this?
I would ask for it, yes. I think even Mr. Carlson wrote it up in here, and yeah, in the at the bottom of the
Section 5.
Yeah, it's at the very last whereas paragraph on the ordinance language, so.
I'll amend to include the emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Winarski. Do I have a second? Mr. Cowger?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? If not, we'll actually do a voice vote for this. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. It passes. Mr. Cowger?
Move to adjourn.
Mr. Winarski?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Thank you. We are adjourned at 6:53.
Thank you for coming extra, everybody, appreciate it.
One less piece of dessert I had to have there, Mr. Rand.
We're legitimate.
Okay.
That was a committee, now we wait till
Mr. Nahorn,
Present.
Mr. Miller,
Present.
Mr. Janik,
Here.
Mr. Venturin,
Here.
Mr. Dembinski,
Here.
Mr. Cowger,
Here.
Mr. Benarski.
Mr. Patak has a letter on file. Mr. Cowger,
I'd like to make a motion to excuse Mr. Patak from tonight's meeting.
Mr. Dembinski.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to excuse Mr. Patak. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion is carried 7-0. Mr. Patak is excused. Will you please join me while Chaplain Nahorn says the prayer and the pledge to the flag by Sergeant at Arms Dembinski.
Please join me in bowing your heads. Gracious God, having President's Day this month, we are reminded of the wisdom of President Abraham Lincoln. Commitment is what transforms a promise into reality. Let us continue to act out our commitments in what we say and do. And now let the words of our mouths and meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your vision. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go to item 4 on the consent agenda.
Minutes of the regular council meeting held February 12, 2018. Minutes of the Finance Committee meeting held February 19, 2018. Minutes of the Technology Committee meeting held February 19, 2018. Minutes for the Building and Lands Committee meeting held February 19, 2018. Minutes of the Ordinance Committee meeting held February 26, 2018.
Mr. Cowger.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda as read.
Mr. Van Truen.
Second that.
There's a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda as read. Comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion is carried 7-0. The consent agenda is accepted. We will go to item number 5 on the agenda, acknowledgement of the public pertaining to items on the agenda. Is there anyone wishing to speak tonight on any item on the agenda? Mr. Purcell. Mr. Purcell, would you please come up and state your name and address and which item on the agenda you wish to address?
My name is Dave Purcell, at 820 Ford Avenue. So the rest of this understood. Speaking with respect to resurfacing Ford Avenue and more generally the resurfacing of existing areas that are concrete currently and directly resurfacing over the top of the concrete. So expanding beyond even the current item, which is Ford Avenue, but the general practice thereof. Generally speaking, the number of the residents within the Apple Orchard area, what I speak to currently, we looked at the practice of covering with asphalt, the general condition of streets after being covered with asphalt, the process that it undergoes, as well as the longevity once you have covered the street with asphalt. Generally speaking, the other reports that have gone by about less expensive, different costs over time, ODOT recommendations have all come through, and I realize there's been a lot of discussion about it. Specifically, I'd like to address the fact that ODOT used to put asphalt over concrete, no longer does, because of the damage that happens to the asphalt. You have soft material between the hard surface and the cars. It tends to break it down very quickly. More specifically, even when you look at some of the material that I had circulated previously, Mr. Mogarski had forwarded for me. Thank you very much for that. You look at what happens when you have things such as water passing through asphalt, which it will, but will not go through concrete, freezing, causing creation of potholes, chuck holes, whatever you'd like to use, and the quick deterioration of the asphalt. On top of that, you also have the subject of the substrate itself. And even the asphalt and paving companies will tell you that if you have a poor substrate, That allows the top surfaces to move very easily. And again, it accelerates deterioration, causing cracking, breakdown of materials, a lot of cinders, a lot of gravel, that sort of thing, block drains and so on. To that end, I did bring some information along with me in addition to what I shared before. I've gone through, and I did not date timestamp these. I will tell you that that is the sun rising this morning in Amherst. So these are all fresh off the press. I don't know the best way to hand things around, so I'll just go this way and make my way around. What this is just a series of things, photos of just kind of the cinders around the edges of fresh asphalt areas. And then I have got 8 additional pictures showing last year's asphalt that was done. And I don't know the exact date, so you can tell better than I can. But in July, August last year, portions of Orchard were covered in asphalt, the cold cul-de-sac, some of the intersections down McIntosh. So I went around this morning just to get a lay of the land, see how things look currently, and found that with the exception of the not as frequently traveled cul-de-sac across from me, York Imperial, every other instance where the asphalt had gone, not just a patch, not a seam, but where the entire road has been covered for some fairly long length, exhibited cracks at seams, long splits down the middle, where it's already starting to break down. And this is, again, only really one partial winter, and certainly not 4 full seasons. So no extremes of temperature has been present to this point. To that end, I also thought, am I the only one? Am I kind of nuts about this? How do other people feel about this? What's that great little tool that Zuckerberg got rich on, Facebook? So what I did was I put a little informal poll out there on Friday. And I just said, just so I'm not crazy, just to the residents, how do you feel about asphalt over concrete? And I try to just keep everybody from getting too crazy on opinions and individual agendas. Let's say, here's 4 possible answers, just pick one. Nice and simple. I started with, I agree and understand with the city because it's the least costly solution, at least initially, and I believe that it has no impact on housing prices or perception of either the neighborhood or the city. Choice B was, I don't really care, because you always get a percentage of people who, I just don't care. It's fine. Then I have the other one which says, I do not like it, and I believe it should be it's just a Band-Aid and really not a cure. I'm concerned about perception of the neighborhood, potential impact on future home values, from people dismissing the community, the mess, and the potential for damage to the sewers. D was, I don't understand why the city's resurfacing now. Our streets seem fine. We had 185 people look at it. We had 90 plus responders. I didn't know if I got them all on here. Thank you. And I'll report that 100% of the people who responded said C. And not one person said A, not one person said they didn't care, not one person said they didn't feel that the streets needed repair. That's, again, it's just a little sampling of just people. You see how I worded it? I tried not to persuade it one way or another. I made the choice that I firmly believed in C, so everybody would read the other things before they got that far. As well as making the last line a single liner so people would catch their eye. So I really feel that people looked at it, read all 4 of the choices. And again, while it's speaking to specifically going down my street in front of my house, the fact that I have relatives and family who lived in developments that have been concrete and covered from asphalt, and I know what they've gone through, and it wasn't in the city of Amherst. Generally speaking, it's not viewed up very positively. And my bigger concern along the way is it really the best thing for Amherst? Fiscally, perception's a reality. Is it the right thing for us moving forward? If in less than 9 months we're seeing breakdown, we've got people talking about sewage getting backed up and the buildup of all the asphalt pieces along our curbs and our streets. Not to mention the potential additional mess that some people have told me about that I haven't seen personally. So the hearsay about just the dirt and the tar that comes along with it and getting tracked up into your driveways and what that takes to remove. I just really couldn't go without coming up and saying this is a real concern. It's just a real concern overall. Again, I will firmly say that I'm far on one side. I really, from the word go, hated the idea. I won't be shy about it. Chuck knows. I've been in here more than once, that this is not one of my favorite things. Again, we've even seen, ODOT changes. Now when ODOT goes through, they put down 100% asphalt all the way through, so they're putting out a new area. And admittedly, all of their work was related to freeways and highways. It wasn't related to development and surface coverage. But we do consistently see that when there's areas of challenge and areas of trouble, to have a low maintenance solution overall, people put down concrete. We continue to put concrete throughout, the city and some of the main thoroughfares as we go through. We see concretes being replaced in kind for development standard concrete in our surrounding areas, in Lorraine, in the township. They do it methodically, slowly. It is not inexpensive. It is costly to do. It does tie up the traffic as it flows through. Certainly, all that comes into play. But overall, how much does it save you in the long run? I was just driving in this evening, and I looked down, and Ford, where it was first put in before Apple Orchard, I didn't have really any idea how long ago that was put in. But it's in really decent shape. And I know it wasn't put in since I moved in. And as far as I can recall visiting friends who moved to that development, when the houses first went in, it was there prior to that. And it's in far better shape than our development. And from what I understand, part of the problem we're having is that the builder didn't do as much as he should have done underneath. So we have a poor substrate. We have problems with our concrete now. Our concrete's moving. And if we have a poor substrate, asphalt over top is not a good recommended practice, even from the asphalt companies and the pavers. It's what they do every day, and I think that, generally speaking, it's not a good idea. And I would hate to see us support, good money after bad. Realizing we've started a process, but, nothing says you can't stop and go in a different direction if you realize that maybe it's just a better way to go. So all I'd ask to do was just come up and share some information of what I had, what I've been able to find out from talking to people, have a good, lively discussion about, is it good, is it bad? I know that I'm sure that some people may feel it's too far down the road, no pun intended, sorry, but maybe it's not. And at the end of the day, they say, when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the second best time to plant a tree? Today. So if you spent the money, it's already, it's been spent, fine. It'd be great to go back and do it differently, but maybe the next best time to look at that is right now. So that's what I want to come out here today and say and share with everyone. And if anybody has any specific questions for me, I'm happy to field those. I tried not to make it all personal opinion. I try to give you some articles, some information, and again, just pictures just to show you that it's not holding up. It's cracking very quickly. So I do thank everyone for your time and attention. I appreciate that. Any questions from you all out there?
Mr. Winars.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Purcell, first of all, thank you. Thank you for taking the time out of a Monday night. Last week, we spent $30 million of your tax dollars, and no one showed up. No one even cared to even comment about what we're spending in the parks or anything else. My point being, you took the time to come up here, and I wish more people got involved. So first of all, thank you very much. I did take the chance to read all your stuff here. I will never... Mr. Purcell is not going to tell you one thing that I do know about him. This gentleman was accepted in MIT engineering out of high school. I won't question anything you have to argue about engineering or anything like that. But I will visit a couple of things that came out of the article, and that had to do with, I think mostly what they challenge is the preparation and how you handle putting asphalt over the concrete. We visited that last year. And I'll speak to the mayor and the safety service director, if you can please comment on this. We spend a lot of time studying the substrate, don't we? There's study or testing that's done in advance to make sure it's appropriate, and then we attend to any issues we find.
It is, and that's why it's also important time to not wait till the surface that's there now get too bad before you do overlay it concrete, because you do want somewhat of a decent substrate. And we do core samples, we'll do full depth repairs where necessary. So we put a lot of effort in picking the streets that aren't too far gone, and I don't think we have any in Amherst yet. That's where we're trying to get ahead of them. There's a lot of concrete streets right now, and honestly, if we started replacing them one at a time with concrete, the rest of them are going to crumble and disappear in the next 5 to 10 years. We're only going to have a portion of them completed. Maybe in the best world we could do these kind of repairs with concrete, but my hope is things get better and, you know, Amherst falls into a big windfall, there's nothing to say in 10 years instead of asphalting over asphalt, maybe there can be those full concrete repairs brought back. But right now, there's so much building going on at the time this was built. There's just such a huge amount of concrete roads needing repaired at this time, and there's just no money, no feasible way of doing it without them completely crumbling. I probably was more than you asked for, but
No, and it's
I just wanted
consistent
to
with
add
what we
that
learned
do
last
look
year.
at the substrate.
Mhm. Yeah, and I appreciate that. We really did. I give you credit, first of all, for what you did last year. We really did spend a lot of time looking at asphalt versus concrete and asphalt over concrete. I learned a lot in that process. What ODOT's done to change their approach, I was told, has a lot to do with the advances in asphalt, as far as why they're going with asphalt completely as opposed to asphalt over concrete. A number of your articles touched on what to expect when you put asphalt over concrete, as far as the cracking in the joints in the concrete that were designed to expand and contract. If I'm not mistaken, that's already anticipated, and we have a program in place for sealing those cracks.
We do, and we've looked at some different methods. Some we're looking at that might completely reseal the whole surface rather than just the crack. So it's expected that those cracks happen. I mean, when you make concrete, you purposely put cracks with saws. I mean, there would be just as many cracks with saw marks. You know, they're just controlled cracks. These come through, they're a little bit jagged, but we do plan on within next year or the year after, 2 to 3 years after it's done, to put a crack sealing material on there and help hold that together.
Okay, thank you. And Madam President, I know I'm near my 5 minutes, and I appreciate it. If you just indulge me for another minute, I appreciate it. There are some other comments with regards to the dreaded water, and that is the death of any road, whether water get in there or not. Once again, it's consistent. We anticipate water to be absorbed into asphalt, and with that, there's a street cleaning program, and then there's the patching program. And then you sent around the pictures, and they do show cracks in year-old asphalt. But if I'm not mistaken, we didn't put that in or design or engineer as a permanent solution. That was just to fill some holes. Is that correct?
And where's that, the Durapatch?
Over, no, this is over by your house?
Those were throughout the entire neighborhood.
Okay.
That was McIntosh, where the whole street's been done, and
Right.
so on. And I do understand you're gonna get some relief. Didn't know when the timing of the plan was covering. The water is the enemy of anything. Expansion, and correct, you know, the cracks put in concrete on purpose. Obviously, it's a controlled breakdown, because in Ohio, things freeze, things are going to move. We don't have the luxury of being able to put concrete up and down and contour it and everything else like you do in Georgia and other places. We don't certainly enjoy that. So we make them into pads, we cut them, we allow them to move, we have expansion joints. The biggest enemy of most of the concrete that we put in is we don't actually do something to seal those as well, even on concrete. Water gets between them, water starts to erode. Now you've got tension instead of compression. Ceramic materials hate tension, so the edges start to crack and they'll start to fold in. We see that throughout all the, the neighborhoods, all in that path. Sealing those is the preventative side of it, is a way to curtail what we've seen over time. It would have been a measure that, again, dialing back 20 years ago, stepping through them, a way to preventively treat those roads so this wouldn't happen. Waiting a year or two to seal these ones as they come along, I think is going to be problematic, only from the standpoint is that they can continue to grow, continue to move. If that's our plan, I hope that we would touch them a little bit sooner. I was concerned largely with water retainment because of how we even prep the roads. We ground down the intersection, for example. We have to do some grinding, otherwise we're going to have a lot of issues with the water and how high the asphalt is with respect to the curves. So as we approach the Ford going into McIntosh and we ground down that intersection, organic material coming into Ford, ground down that intersection. No longer do we have a natural way for that water to now run off of the concrete that it's fallen to underneath. It is a fully trapped area. There was no prep as far as potential holes for drainage to go on down through the concrete, lowering it as it goes toward the curb, which would then have to go up to get out. So the concerns about water and how that's going to go. Even asphalt over asphalt has this problem. As I went from 270 to 71 yesterday, coming back from visiting my daughter down at college, I watched 6 cars all on the side of the road repairing their tires just because of the chuck holes that were just going from 270 to 71. And that was all concrete, all asphalt going through. So you're not going to get away with it. Water is the enemy. It's Ohio, things freeze. Understand that. The best we can do is hope to offset it and let Mother Nature work with us, as opposed to working against us, and drain away naturally wherever possible. And with the surface prep and what we've done to this point, I'm looking at some things in the opposite going on, and I'm just with a growing level of concern. So that's, and I
okay.
understand the fiscal side of things.
Mr.
overall.
Purcell, is
Yes.
there, we need to continue there.
Yes.
I believe there may be some other questions. Are you done, Mr. Wood?
I've exceeded my 5 minutes, and thank you very
Thank
much
you
for your
very
patience. I
much.
yield the floor.
All right. Mr. Miller?
Thank you, Madam President. Dave, I appreciate it. Mr. Purcell, I appreciate you coming up here, taking the time to find out what your neighbors feel. Sometimes we find out, sometimes we don't know. We do keep an eye on social media as well, hoping to get an idea here. The 90 or the choice in this, you didn't give them a whole lot of options out, but it's either they were in favor of it or not, and the way it was worded, I would have had a hard time looking at that as being all that valid. But where I do give you kudos and credit is you're very knowledgeable and well prepared to discuss this. I'm not an engineer, nor I even pretend. What I would say is that we had our engineer come in and explain to us how they are going to work with our contractor for the streets. And both have given us firm commitments that the way that concrete's prepared, asphalt could be put over it. It would still have a shelf life. And with the general maintenance, yearly maintenance, sealing, that kind of stuff, asphalt would last. And if that's not the case, Mr. Mayor, is that changed? Do we still have an agreement between our engineer and the companies that we're contracting with for asphalt, that this is still going to provide us with 20 years, I think it was, for asphalt?
It's definitely not going to last as long as concrete. I mean, I'm the first one to agree with that, but when you do the cost analysis, how we can maintain it ourselves, how much work needs to be done within the city, honestly, this isn't an easy decision on my part. You know, a lot of study goes into this. It's just the best way to get as much road as we can and maintain it ourselves and make a nice ride for the best as possible for the residents. I mean, it's not going to last as long as concrete, but I think when you look at the whole picture, it's what is best for us.
And what we've done in the past, and since I've been back into this area, I've noticed that we have replaced with concrete. But it's because of the cost and because of the limited budget we have, we're doing small stretches. And I've seen a lot of our other streets, and the mayor and I had this discussion earlier, we have a very old infrastructure, and it's crumbling. And if we don't get to it soon and start sealing these up, we're gonna have to, and this would be my next question to you, is if we don't get to it, your road, then we pull up the concrete and put asphalt on. Would you be comfortable with a full asphalt base, concrete gone? Would you feel comfortable that road would last? Or is it the concrete that we're still stuck on, that we want a concrete look and that we want a concrete neighborhood? I mean, where are we at with this? Because I know financially, I cannot sign off on concrete for this city with our budget and still be able to have cars riding on the roads without tearing up their alignment and wheels.
No, I understand completely, and at the end of the day, while all concrete is certainly ideal, looking at the volume of total concrete and the ability to do repairs in very small or specific areas, there might be some balance within there. But a pulling up of concrete and going completely asphalt, properly prepped, would be preferable over asphalt over concrete at the end of the day. Because it would be then, the system would be designed for it. You know, how the water moves, how things drain off, how things go. The fact that you've now captured it from side to side, without giving you the ability for it to pull off and to bleed, also is definitely advantageous as well. So, you know, again, we all look at budgets. I don't know anyone who doesn't.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, I'm concerned that while at least right now may appear to be less expensive, will it be overall in the long run? Maybe for the first 3 years, 5 years, it might be. I don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon, so like Amherst, been here for a little while now. And would hate to see us creating something of a similar nature for ourselves down the road. So that's part of my concern as well.
Okay, we need to, we need to move on.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Purcell.
Thank you for your time, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on any item pertaining to the agenda? And if you wish to speak on the item regarding the roads, it needs to be new information. Seeing none, we will go to item number 6 on the agenda, ordinances and resolutions, first reading.
Item A, an ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Amherst, State of Ohio during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2018, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Cowger.
I'd like to make a motion to pass item A on to the second reading.
Mr. Dembinski.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to pass item A on to the, 6A on to the second reading. Mr. Mayor, do you
And
have?
then that'll work, it just has to be the county by April 1st.
Okay, very good. Mr. Cowger.
The reason I'm making the motion to pass it on to the second reading is it doesn't have to go for a full month. This also gives us a chance now for the next month, if something else comes up that we need to make an adjustment on the budget, we can make that adjustment before the budget is passed.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Mr. Nahorn?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, I had a comment. I raised my hand. I apologize. I wasn't clear enough on that, Madam President.
All right, we'll stop the vote. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Madam President. Just briefly, first I want to say thank you to council for excusing me this past week and my inability to be at a committee meeting that has to do with the budget. Anybody that knows me has been around for the last over 5-6 years here. They know that this is a huge issue for me, to watch the budget, to take the time to make sure that we're making good decisions, to do our due diligence with the mayor. Because of that, not only excuse me for that and not being at the committee, I want to thank our mayor for meeting with me on his own time and going line by line over this budget and discussing this with me, so I would not have to do that here on the floor after the first reading, after council's already over. I do want to say this. Mr. Costello, our mayor, has over the years always answered my questions. Has been very diligent about that on the floor. And we may not have always agreed with how things are being appropriated or why. I truly believe that you're doing a good job of putting this budget together in a sound way. I think that your transparency is very welcome on my end. I really think that's what government's all about. If you have any questions on why I'm going to, in the next 30 seconds, say that I'm happy with this budget instead of usually 30 minutes that our last council president would sometimes give me as much of to discuss this, I can promise you that your time that you took outside of council with me was appreciated, was welcome, and I believe that our citizens are going to be better for it. So, Madam President, I appreciate you giving me the time to speak on that before the vote, and I yield the floor back to you and for a vote. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, let's start the roll call vote again.
Okay, start at the beginning. Mr. Nahorn?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes.
Mr. Dembinski?
Yes.
Mr. Cowger?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Motion is 7-0. 6A is passed to the second reading. Item 6B.
An ordinance authorizing the City of Amherst, Ohio to enter into an agreement with Wide Open West Cleveland LLC, WOW, for pole attachments of aerial cables and associated equipment and hardware and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Dembinski.
Move to send item 6B on to the second reading.
Mr. Mayor.
Were we thinking about suspending rules? I thought that's what you talked about when the fellow was here. And we give them a chance to start building this and give the residents an opportunity for a new choice. So again, up to you, but I just thought that was talked about at the committee meeting. But 100% your pleasure.
I believe you're correct, we did talk about that. Perhaps it was just new council training that we did over the weekend, but part of me is a little hesitant sometimes to pass some things on suspension of council rules. Excuse me. Maybe we don't necessarily need it all the time. If it would be the pleasure of this time, since it was already introduced and we already discussed it, I'm willing to withdraw my previous motion and make a new one. But I think going forward, I'm gonna maybe be a little bit more strict on some of that stuff. But I'm willing to withdraw my motion or change it.
Okay, you may change it if you wish.
I would like to change my motion to suspend council rules that item 6B may be passed on the first reading.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dembinski. Mr. Nahar.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the council rule requiring 3 readings so that this item number 6B can be passed on the first reading. Comments or questions? Mr. Miller and then Mr. Winarski.
Thank you, Madam President. So we have a vendor here, it's new to our city that's coming in here who's asking for a suspension of rules and having this declared on emergency to start putting cables up. I had noticed some people had stated on social media, so therefore I don't believe half of it, that there's already cabling going up already.
That's for our own network. Our own
Oh, for our own-
between our city buildings. WOW has not done anything yet.
Okay.
And also, I
I've
believe
seen
that the cable company is transferring from the old poles to the new poles also
There
in
are
some areas.
some of that
Yeah.
going on too.
So I think we just helped clear up all that fake news as everybody likes to throw out there. So we do not have WOW on the poles. We do have fiber going up for our, and some transferring of poles. So that's good to hear. The next question is, my understanding, and this is the law director who knows this well, we really don't have a whole lot of say on this when it comes to this saying yes or no of laying the cable up on the poles.
Not really. And the fact that the mayor was able to negotiate such a good contract is actually, in my mind, remarkable. So,
So we have a good contract.
yeah. This actually, for the first time, provides for competition. I think what people have been looking for and asking about competition in their media provisions. No longer will we have just one show in town, so to speak.
We have CenturyLink and we have Spectrum. Is that correct right now?
Correct.
Is that our current two
Correct.
vendor? And so this will add a third. Competition is good. I fully support the opportunity to drive prices down.
I believe the mayor has a comment on
And then,
it.
and you were right that we really don't have a say. FCC and other state laws says that this is all state regulated. They have the right 100% to come into our right of way and do these things. It's just really good working with these companies who are willing to work with us and negotiate these deals so that we could have something good for the residents.
Is there anything else that we're in contract with and when it comes to WOW, or is it just that they're going to be putting internet opportunity, phone?
We negotiated the pole attachment agreement, which is real,
I read that,
even
yeah.
talks about rising the prices each year, to somewhat deal with inflation. We've also worked out a right-of-way use agreement, which I can't find another utility that's come out with one with the city. So the city's got some very good protections on this company come in doing things in our right-of-way. So they don't have to do that, and they did.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam President. No
Thank
more.
you. Mr. Winarski.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to echo Mr. Dembinski's comments with regards to the use of the emergency. There's a simple rule that'll be applied to new legislation introduced from this point on. That's new legislation. With that said, everything I had to say prior, especially what the law director had to say about introducing competition into our city, it's a positive thing. Credit to the administration for the deal they negotiated. That's all I had to say, and I yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, roll call vote.
This is on the suspension of rules. Mr. Nahorn?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
No.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes.
Mr. Dembinski?
Yes.
Mr. Cowger?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-1. Mr. Cowger.
Move to adopt.
Mr. Winarski.
I will second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Mr. Nahorn?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes.
Mr. Dembinski?
Yes.
Mr. Cowger?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
It'll be ordinance 01808.
We'll go to item 6C on the agenda.
I'm actually here to represent Airgas. If there's any questions or...
Hang on one second. We have to read the item,
I
and
apologize.
that's okay, that's all right. And then I will recognize you.
Thank you.
An ordinance approving plans and granting a certificate of occupancy to Airgas USA LLC for storage, warehousing, and distribution use for the premises known as 1897 Cooper Foster Park Road, Amherst, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Unless anyone in council has an objection, I will call upon the Airgas representative to talk first. Will you please come to the podium and state your name and address?
Good evening. My name is Dave Ross. I actually live on 882 Lyria Avenue in Amherst, Ohio. I'm here to represent Airgas.
Thank you. Do you wish to say anything?
No, just
So you're available to answer questions?
Correct.
Okay, if you'd like to stay there. Mr. Mayor first, and then we'll call on council, Mr. Miller.
Remember, this is just the second part of the industrial review board that council plays a part as. The law department and myself, we went to extreme lengths to figure out really what we had to do here. And it just seems, we thought about treating it like we do liquor permits, and just does anybody disagree with this, and go on from there. We decided a resolution or ordinance would be the best here. Planning Commission approved this. I think they want to get on with their business as quick as possible. I don't remember if this was discussed about suspension of rules, but it seemed that Mr. Carlson was confident that one reading of this was sufficient to pass it on, unless there was some...
There's no change in zoning.
Yeah, this is not change of zoning. This is just a certificate occupancy, and it's kind of a double standard within the ordinances. It says that certain industrial uses can be done in a C2 zone, but those uses would have to come in front of City Council and Planning Commission. So I really don't think this is necessary to read it 3 times if there's no objections here.
Thank you for restating that. Mr. Miller, do you have questions?
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Dave. And then, I'm sure these questions were probably asked in committee when you were here, and I wasn't, so I apologize. My understanding is there's going to be storage.
correct.
There's going to be frontage for walk-in sales.
Correct.
You have to get inspection and safety permits from state and us here in the city as well.
Correct.
I don't know about federal, but for sure the state, right?
State, yes. Federal, I would think we'd probably do it
Okay.
anyway.
So state and local. And then probably to get bonded and insured, to have people walking into your front, that's probably got to be some serious safety standards there. The mayor's assured me that he's pretty comfortable with this. Your footprint, how you're going to store it, the amount of traffic that'll be going, how much burden that's going to place on Cooper Foster, because you'll be running trucks, right? People will be coming in with trucks.
The customers, yes, and we'll have one delivery truck.
And one daily delivery?
Yes.
Okay. And then that's to the Route 2 usually?
We actually have local customers in Amherst.
I mean, your delivery, I was just wondering.
As far as,
Is it a big semi that's going to be coming in? Or
yes, it will
No.
be a semi.
No, I understand they're
Like a
Class
single
Bs.
axle
These
still.
are-
Single axle, yeah. but I
Yeah,
mean,
single
it's-
axles,
Okay.
Big
Class
truck,
So it'd be a
single
single
axle.
axle? Okay.
Class Bs.
And your it looks like certificate of occupancy, is that what they're looking for from us? Is a approval of an ordinance accepting a certificate of, so you're ready to go, or?
We're ready to go, just waiting for the approval.
All right, and
Everything's in place, yes.
everything's in place, so when would you come online then?
As soon as we would get the approval, I would say within 2 months, we'd be ready to roll.
Okay, oh, so you're gonna get an occupancy certificate before all inspections are completed?
They need to apply for the permits to do the improvements of the building.
Correct.
No reason to put the fence up, fix the inside of the building if they're not going to approve this use. So the certificate of occupancy will not be done until they complete all their construction within the building, and the building department has the authority to withhold that.
So there's already been, this is what still needs to be done before you're ready to give them a certificate of occupancy, correct?
Correct.
But we're voting on giving them a certificate of occupancy before those things are done.
This is the wording the law department put on this, but I don't think that's actually.
Well, I just want to
Yes,
clarify
yes,
that we're
yes.
not,
Could I, just a minute, if we're going to continue discussing this, we need to have a motion and a second in order to continue discussing it.
no, that's fine.
That's a rule.
Thank you, Madam President.
Mr.
I'll wait for
Van
a motion and a second to continue.
Move to suspend council rules so that item 6C can be passed on the first reading.
Okay. Mr. Winarski?
I'll second.
Okay, now we can continue. Yes, Mr. Miller, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. So we'll be ready 2 weeks, you expect 2 months, sorry, 2 months after
Correct.
this is signed off by the law department and the mayor. And that's so that you'll have time to do all upgrades.
Correct. As far as safety goes, Airgas's SOP is above and beyond. We will follow city ordinance, but as far as that, we're more stringent than what the city would actually want
And I-
internally.
Probably for insurance and bonding.
Correct.
You're probably gonna have to have those standards if you're having people walk into your frontage. So, I guess this is a law director question then. Mr. Law Director, what is the steps? And how is this vote, and how is this ordinance playing a part in the steps?
This is a unique situation in our ordinances, and perhaps we'll be talking to the mayor about changing this process. This ordinance, which was created, I believe, in the 60s or 70s, allows council to actually be one member of our planning commission in this type of approval. This is unique and actually quite unorthodox. And this has already been, if I'm not mistaken, gone through the planning commission.
Yes, and voted on unanimously.
And all the steps that anyone else seeking this type of zoning would have to go through if it were zoned in a different capacity, commercial or whatnot. They wouldn't have to go through this. And that's why we probably should be changing this down the pike. This is a formality. Council has a right to interject itself, but I don't think it has in our capacity or as part of the administration. But basically, you are one vote. This body here is one vote as part of whether or not this is approved.
So it sounds to me like in the ordinance, whenever the ordinance was written, and I can't go into the heads of those who wrote that ordinance and passed it, but it sounds to me like this was set up because they wanted to make sure that council had a check on administration in this particular type of zoning, type of business, right? Would that be?
I don't know what council.
But that's what this is basically, is a one
1960s.
vote check?
It's one vote, yeah.
So if planning commission is already at however many, 0, unanimous.
There's like 2 parts. It probably really is 2 parts, and I think it takes 3/4 vote of council to also approve this. It's very unique. We haven't done this within the city of Amherst in quite a few years. We don't get too many industrial uses before us, and this is a really good location for this. It's a good use for this building, and it really just says approval of council. It doesn't say it needs to be an ordinance. Doesn't say it needs to be a resolution, but Assistant Law Director Carlson thought it would be best if we did this as an ordinance just so that we're safe. So guaranteed, building department is not going to allow them to occupy that building until all the safety protocol, all the fence and everything else they need to do to that building is complete and fire inspections are done. So maybe improper wording here, but it's going to fit the bill, what we need.
So we need a three-quarter vote on this. And this is another suspension of council rules request.
And again, Mr. Carlson didn't think this would need to go 3 readings. Like I said, we almost thought this could have been something where we said, does anybody not agree with this? Something like we do with the liquor permits. We almost brought it to you that way, but thought you would deserve a better voice than that. And if you think this is a good use, suspension of rules would be in play on this one. Another business and another empty building, long-standing empty building, become occupied.
Any further
Thank
questions?
you, ma'am. No further questions.
Okay.
Yield back to the floor.
Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, there's a motion and a second to suspend council rules so that this can be passed on first reading. Roll call vote.
Mr. Nahorn?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
No.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes.
Mr. Dembinski?
Yes.
Mr. Cowger?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Motion passes 6 to 7.
6
Miss-
to 1.
6 to 1.
I'm 6 to 1. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Winarski.
Motion to adopt.
Thank you. Mr. Cowger.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Mr. Nahorn?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes.
Mr. Dembinski?
Yes.
Mr. Cowger?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Motion passes 7 to 0.
Will be ordinance 01809.
Item 6D.
An ordinance amending Chapter 192 of the Amherst Codified Ordinances to adopt Section 71880 through 71895 of the Ohio Revised Code as Sections 192.45 through 192.60 of that chapter and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Dembinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a textbook example of an emergency and suspension of council rules. Therefore, I would like to motion to suspend council rules that item 6D may be passed on the first reading.
Mr. Cowger.
Second.
Motion and a second to suspend council rules so that item 6D can be passed on the first reading. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Treasurer, thank you. In your office.
Oh,
I mean, this was
the
a
girls
lot.
do all the real work, man. I mean, you know what? For whatever it's worth, they're the ones that are really working their tails off, and they really make me look great.
Well, please pass. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just saying, please pass it along. My thanks for your effort and theirs, of course. They do it on a daily basis, but I appreciate your leadership on trying to fight on our behalf. And this is, like Mr. Dembinski said, a textbook reason. So, thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Mr. Nahorn?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes.
Mr. Dembinski?
Yes.
Mr. Cowger?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Motion passes 7 to 0. Mr. Dembinski.
Move to adopt.
Mr. Miller.
Second, please.
Motion and a second to adopt. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Mr. Nahorn?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes.
Mr. Dembinski?
Yes.
Mr. Cowger?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Motion passes 7 to 0.
You'll be ordinance 01810.
And that concludes section 6. We go on to section 7, ordinances and resolutions, second reading.
An ordinance approving and accepting dedicated improvements for the preserve at Quarry Lakes Phase 2 and approving the subdivision plat therefore and declaring an emergency.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
There was some discussion about passing this one, suspension of rules last meeting, and there were some questions about the proper dollar amount of bonds that were submitted. Those have been submitted. Some other issues were cleaned up. I mean, the administrator sees no reason why this shouldn't get passed. Developer might want to speak on reasons, but we see no reason this shouldn't move forward and get passed.
Mr. Van Turen.
Move to suspend council rules so that this can be passed on the first reading, and I have a comment as well.
In the second
On to suspend
Pardon me,
rules
on
on
the
second
second
reading.
reading, yeah.
Okay, you reserve the right to comment first if we have a second. We have a second on this. Mr. Calgar.
Second.
Motion and a second to suspend council rules. Mr. Van Truin.
So, yeah, I do have a quick question for the developer. If I remember correctly, Sean told us last week that this is literally holding up your ability to start selling these units. You're waiting for us to pass this, keeping new residents of the community, potential tax dollars, et cetera, et cetera. I think this fits the bill for declaring an emergency as well and passing now. So, that's all.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Madam President. 2 weeks ago, I sat here and heard the mayor express his assurances that it was ready to go. I agreed with him. I thought suspension of council rules to bring competition in and to bring another developer in to be able to sell and to be able to market and sell his plots as well was an acceptable reason to suspend. I see we had 2 suspensions of council rules above in the first reading. I hope that this is also been cleared up enough in the rest of our council's mind to suspend council rules and allow this to continue. That's a heck of an applause for that.
Is that it, Mr. Miller?
That's all I have
Okay.
after
Mr.
that.
Winarski.
Thank you, Madam President. To the credit to the administration and the developer, any issues I had that I addressed have been cleared up beyond my satisfaction. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, there's a motion and a second to suspend the rule that requires 3 readings so that this can be passed on the second reading. Roll call.
Mr. Nahorn?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes.
Mr. Dembinski?
Yes.
Mr. Calgar?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. The rule is suspended. Mr. Calgar.
Move to adopt.
Mr. Miller.
Second, please.
Motion and a second to adopt. Comments or questions? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Mr. Nahorn?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes.
Mr. Dembinski?
Yes.
Mr. Calgar?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Motion passes 7-0.
Will be ordinance 01811.
We will go on to item 7B.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director to solicit bids for the 2018 street rehabilitation program and authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director to award the contract for such work to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and authorizing the mayor to enter in a contract for professional services with Bramhall Engineering and Surveying Company relating to such program and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Dembinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before we vote on this, I'd like to thank everyone that came out. I'd like to thank Mr. Purcell, actually especially. I remember last year, even when I knocked on your door, you were not a fan of the asphalt right across from you at York Imperial. So I didn't know at the time that your road was going to be on the road on the docket for this year, but I fully expected to see you up here. I'm glad you were up here. I read all of the material that you sent out. I watched the Facebook stuff roll in and everybody picking the same option. I did unofficially, I guess, or informally, whatever, contact some of those people and some of my other friends back in that area, just to kind of get my feel on that kind of stuff too. One person flat out said they just didn't care, which kind of surprised me. One person said they actually preferred the asphalt because they felt that it was much quieter than the concrete. They were on one of the main drags that got redid last year, and actually in your area, both on Ford and West Martin, that may be a benefit. Most of the people that I talked to said basically the same thing. We want concrete. But if if it delays getting redone, most people said they would be fine with asphalt. Nobody, at least that I had spoken to, was said asphalt and asphalt only. I think the biggest concern for most people I talked to was the perception that it might affect home values, which is a completely valid concern. I tried to do research on if pavement or asphalt streets lowered property values. I actually couldn't find any. I apologize if I didn't do enough diligent research on that, but I couldn't find anything concrete one way or the other. I've also reached out to a a friend of mine who is a project manager with ODOT in a different district than ours. She's actually down in the Columbus district, both because I want to give her a little bit of grief because, man, those potholes in Columbus are bad, but also because I'd like to see, you know, her information on that and what have you. It was almost kind of funny from one perspective. Right after this was announced in committee, I had somebody on Ford Avenue contact me complaining that the concrete was coming up and falling into his driveway, and was asking when we'd be able to come out and repair it. And I said, we're probably not going to come by and repair it because right now you're scheduled to get repaved. And by the way, when it gets repaved, it's probably going to be with asphalt. You know, what do you think about that? And he was happy we were going to come by and repave it. So I did not contact anybody. Your survey reached many more people than I did. I understand, you know, the people I talked to are somewhat anecdotal, but I didn't have anybody that was adamantly concrete. But I don't want to let anybody think that their concerns are going unheard. And I hope, you know, if you have other concerns about anything, that you bring them back up again. But thank you.
Thank you.
That was actually all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Where's your motion?
I'm waiting for one.
Mr. Winarski.
Thank you, Madam President. We're on the clock here. Any delay, other people are picking up contractors, prices go up and such like that.
It's a strong possibility, you know, the sooner it gets done, the sooner we can get a bid out, the sooner we might get a better price. It's kind of up to council. I'll take suspension rules, but if it goes 2 more weeks, I'll work around it. So really truly up to whoever makes the motion.
Yeah. I like saving money. So
And we're
with that-
getting into, it'll be mid-March, and that's key bidding season. And we'll be behind. Yes, Mr. Winarski.
I'll make the motion and request to suspend council rules to pass this on an emergency since,
No, pass it on the first reading.
First reading,
The
thank you.
second reading, second reading.
let me redo that. Make a motion to suspend council rules to pass this on the first reading, on the second reading. That's it.
Okay, good.
That's it.
Mr. Cowger.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rule requiring 3 readings so that this can be passed on the second reading. Mr. Cowger.
Yes. Every time I think of repairing concrete streets, the one that I traveled on the most that was repaired, it seemed like every year we were doing work on it, was Elyria Avenue. And we repair it with concrete, and it looks great. And then the next spring, the sections next to the sections that we did the repair on are in need of repair, and it's on either that year's streets or the following year's streets. I would say we've been on Elyria doing road work for, back when I was on council 10 years ago, every other year we were doing work, and all the way through here. So I'm thinking that the way that we're approaching this potentially is a better way than dealing with constantly being on the street doing small concrete patches, because we simply can't afford at this time in the city to totally go in, take the street down, and do the entire thing in concrete again. So that's why I'll be voting for this.
Thank you very much. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm okay with suspension on second reading. We've had a chance for Mr. Purcell, and I thank you for coming up here. A lot of information that, I saw that list of attachments and my eyes got big when I saw the email. I didn't read through every one of them. I'll be the first to be as candid as possible with you on this. I did skim through most of it. I did pay attention to Facebook, as did, it seems like, Councilman Dominski and others. I'm pretty confident with, right now, what our engineers and the different pavers are saying that they could do. I would love to see them guarantee that there's a certain shelf life for asphalt over concrete. I have a feeling you're right. I grew up on Elyria Avenue. Mr. Cowger grew up behind it. And him and I know what that streets look like for 40-some years of our lives. I'm actually happy to see it paved. currently with asphalt over top. I've also noticed that driveways, because of the raising of it, has actually allowed driveways not to have to dip back down. So it's probably not our number one choice. My concern is the street program that he's putting out is going to fix these problems and I believe increase homeowner value in the city, because we're going to be able to get most of our streets done in a reasonable amount of time. With concrete, we're just not going to be able to do it. It's going to be too small sections. We're going to have crumbling areas. And you know, I agree with you. Band-Aids are never usually the best. This is a better Band-Aid, if you will. You know, I'd like to bionic man it, and you know, we can rebuild it from bottom up. We just don't have the money. So thank you for coming up here. I respect everything that you brought to the table with this. I'm going to support us doing this program the way the mayor's laid it out. And I will support suspension after giving you an opportunity. I was not going to support it until you and others had an opportunity to come up here. So thank you for taking the time. I yield back to the
Thank you.
floor. Thanks.
Further comments or questions? Seeing none, roll call vote on suspension of rules.
Mr. Nahorn?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes.
Mr. Dembinski?
Yes.
Mr. Cowger?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That rule is suspended. Mr. Van Truen,
Move to adopt.
Mr. Cowger,
Second.
motion and a second to adopt. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Mr. Nahorn?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes.
Mr. Dembinski?
Yes.
Mr. Cowger?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
It'll be ordinance 01812.
That's it for item 7. Item 8, ordinance and resolutions, third reading, there are none. Item 9, miscellaneous and acknowledgement of the public. Would like to, Mr. Miller, I'll call on you in just a minute. I would like to introduce Janet Garrett, who is a candidate for Congress in Ohio's 4th Congressional District. Will you please stand, Mrs. Garrett?
Welcome.
Thank you very much for coming. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Miller.
Can I give you the meatloaf line, or just to say you took the words right out of my mouth? So I won't tell you how you did it. So thank you, Ms. Garrett, for coming up here. I wish you all the luck in this race. I think you'll serve us well. Thank you very much for the
Thank you.
time.
Thank you. Mr. Dembinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would actually like to extend a thank you to the Ohio Municipal League and Mr. Winarski. Over the weekend, we both traveled down to Columbus to take council training. It was an all-day affair. The morning session was both cities and villages, and the afternoon was just cities only. There was a lot of things we learned down there. We made some good connections. There were some things which, you know, we may be questioning a little bit in the future, seeing if we're doing things, you know, completely the right way, or the things that we could do a little bit better. But I wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to them and to Mr. Winarski for bringing it to our attention. I'm glad we were able to go. I hope anybody on council and even the administration might think about going to one. There's one next month in Independence. It's $65. It's a good way to better ourselves. So that was actually all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, and I believe that was paid for by council. Right?
No, not at this time.
You can turn in
Yeah, turn in
your
Oh.
bills
Yes.
for travel also.
Oh, okay.
If you provide me with all the information, you'll get reimbursed.
Yeah, even better. Okay.
Yeah, and anybody else who wants to do that, we'll reimburse you for that. We've done that in the past. Any other comments? All right. Item number 10, agenda requests and committee meeting schedules.
I have one item, Madam Chair, to Building and Lands, A 1816, an ordinance approving and rezoning a 4.23 acre lot, 0500021, 103097, located at the southeast corner of North Main Street and Cooper Foster Park Road from R1 to C2. Thank you, and that's all I have.
Finance, Mr. Cowger.
Cancel, Madam President.
Building and Lands, Mr. Winarski.
I have one item. It is A 1816 as described by the clerk, and I would like to schedule that for next week. Bear, help jump in anytime here if you want to.
Fifth.
Pardon?
March 5th.
March 5th, 7 o'clock, please.
Thank you very much.
That's all.
Is that complete? Okay. Streets, Mr. Van Troy.
No items this time, please.
Community Development, Mr. Miller.
No items, Madam President, please cancel.
Executive, Mr. Miller.
No items, please cancel.
Ordinance, Mr. Dembinski.
No items at this time, Madam President, please cancel.
Utilities, Mr. Janik.
No items, Madam President, please cancel.
Recycle, Mr. Nahorn.
Please keep recycling.
Technology, Mr. Dembinski.
No items at this time, Madam President, please cancel.
Police and Fire, Mr. Winarski.
I'll give this time, Madam President.
Annexation, Mr. Van Troy.
No items this time, please cancel.
Thank you very much. We will go down now to item 11, reports of the administration. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Ramsey?
Spoke on it briefly during one committee meeting. Got some bad news regarding our litigation going on with our attorney Frost Brown and challenging the state mandated changes to the local tax code. So at present, I'm waiting on kind of what they're going to tell us that we ought to do going forward, if there's a follow-up strategy, if there's any kind of appeal or anything to anything else going on. I know that there was another case that they mentioned that they may be watching to see what the judge does, which was a similar cause of action to our case. So I'll keep you guys posted. Just wanted to give you the update where we're at.
Mr. Miller.
Mr. Treasurer, what district was that in? Was that filed in, do you know?
I think Franklin County.
So,
I mean,
which district?
I
heard that.
That would be what?
Heard that case, excuse me.
Well, it would be the common, I don't know offhand. Don't quote me on it, I'm sorry. I want to say the Franklin County Common Police Court.
I went to a common police court.
I think so, but I honestly, I don't recall now. There's, I don't know exactly which court it was.
Was this a constitutional case? Was it, we were trying to say that it was unconstitutional?
Right,
So,
violated home rule.
so it'd been a federal, would it have gone through common police?
Franklin County. Honestly, I can look it up for you. I can have it for you, but I just don't want to tell you the wrong thing.
Send the note to Mrs. Dembinski and she can give it to everybody else. The
Thank you.
I mean, Mrs. Dembinski, okay. All these
Don't tell my
pocket
husband.
names, okay.
Real boss.
Sorry. Well, okay.
Cat's out of the bag.
Anyway, send it to Mrs. Dembinski. His wife too, if you want.
And I'll look, I may even have it, like, in some of my materials here, I'll look and see if I can give you that answer before we leave here tonight.
Hold on.
Hold on.
Thank you. Mr. Pecora?
No report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Jeffries?
No report, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make one comment about the street program. Might not be the type of service you want, but you can really be assured that we're going to do everything in prepping that, preparing that, and planning for the future, the way that's adhered, so that it has all the opportunity to succeed. We will do the best we can, and we'll work with the residents during the process. So we'll make it as good as possibly we can. So thanks for coming up and speaking. 2017 was a good year for the city of Amherst. We successfully met our goals for construction, maintenance, and level of service that we proposed last year. We have started our journey into the future with needed upgrades to our technology. We are continuing to provide the quality of safety and services residents are accustomed to receiving. Our infrastructure continues to receive ongoing improvements. These are significant accomplishments, all made while sticking to the budget. I will now share with you a snapshot of some of our 2017 accomplishments, along with where we are headed to into the future. This is my annual State of the City report. Amherst citizens, city council, guests, and members of the press, the state of our city is strong. Let me begin with our financial strength. I've long firmly believed that the city needs to operate and spend within its means. I take this very seriously. Last year, I presented a balanced budget. We lived within that budget and again finished the year in the black. The city continued to provide high-quality services and safety forces and complete many projects, all while living within our means. The city's utilities directly affects everyone in our city. and I take seriously the concerns of our residents and businesses and our business customers. I'm confident that we are providing the best service at the most affordable rates possible. To ensure this, last year we contracted with Courtney and Associates to complete an electronic rate and capital expenditure study. The study shows that to retain the reliability of our utilities into the future, the rates will need to be adjusted over the next few years. Contrary to belief, there has been no rate increase to date. Some may feel bills have been high over the winter, but it has been due to higher utility usage, not higher rates. Our electric rates are made up of two parts, the electric rate and the PPA. When the electric rate and the PPA are added together, it equals your total per kilowatt charge. The study showed that the electric rate has not been adjusted since 1984. Soon the electric rate will be raised and the PPA will be adjusted downward accordingly to or at near zero. When added together again, this will be your total kilowatt charge, again with the PPA being near zero. Amherst now enjoys and will continue to enjoy very competitive electric rates. I encourage you to do as I do very often, compare the rates on the PUCO website. There are a number of communities listed and you will be pleasantly surprised how well our rates compare. The same process will be done when adjusting the water rate and lowering the WSA to near or below zero. The city is always striving to continuously improve utility services. Last year, the electric department compiled an inventory listing every utility pole the city owns. The poles were all inspected, assigned a number, a condition assessment was performed, and their GPS locations were all recorded. Poles that were in the worst condition, about 100, have already been replaced by our electric department. Mr. Zabel, the electric department foreman, retired last year. Rich Smith, who already within our ranks as a lead lineman, was promoted to foreman. To provide the best service to our residents and to further meet the future needs of the department, the city has taken on 2 new positions of lineman apprentices. First time in a long time. Another project, the installation of the AMI utility metering system, is underway. The first phase is establishing the network infrastructure, followed later in April by the installation of new electric meters. Some of those electric meters are being already installed by our own utility workers. This will guarantee a more current, consistent, and accurate billing of our utilities, and it will pay for itself in a short time. More importantly, our customers will also have more information available about the utility usage in real time, allowing them to make better energy and water consumption choices. It will even give us a better ability to detect water leaks. Every water meter in the city will also need to be replaced. Because most water meters are in basements, the water department will be working hard, along with outside contractor Bellwether, in replacing those water meters and gaining access to our residents. This meter change out is a complicated process, and I'm asking everyone's patience during this. Even with these complexities, I will assure you that our city will have the policies in place to make this as seamless as possible for our customers, and at all times ensuring that the billing to be correct. If at any time anyone has any questions or concerns about this project, please call our utilities office. City workers are out fixing potholes all winter long. Last year's purchase of the DuraPatch machine has significantly improved pothole and basic road repairs by using a more durable material than cold patch. Not only do we fix potholes as we find them ourselves, we have followed our city pothole repair policy, maintaining that once a pothole is reported by someone in the public, it is fixed within 2 working days. The DuraPatch machine will also be an important tool to add one year of life into Cooper Foster Park Road from State Route 50 east to the city limits. This stretch of road is in need of continuing improvement and has been in the works for many years. All indicators are pointing to bidding this job out at the end of this year for construction in 2019. This is over a $5 million project shared with the city of Lorain. When completed, it will add a lane to the entire length of the road and make much needed stormwater improvements. NOACA and OPWC will contribute approximately 1.5 of the estimated $2.5 million of Amherst's share of the project. This has been a tough winter, and as such has taken a toll on our salt reserves. Keeping enough salt on hand has become a concern. I am considering the construction of a second salt barn, This would allow the city to keep more salt on site without the need to store it outside under a large tarp. This year's regular street repair program is the largest in recent history. The nearly $2 million in street repairs will be prepared soon and out for bid. A nearly $3 million stormwater sewer infrastructure improvement project is planned for this year and will also be bid out soon. This is a project very similar to the sewer interceptor that was installed, downtown and right here near Town Hall in 2012. The city safety forces are excellent. This year's budget allows for the full staffing of both the police and fire departments. The police department is actually adding 2 full-time officers and one full-time dispatcher, which will cut back on the use of part-time positions. The police department would also like to add a full-time civilian supervisor to its department and will be bringing an ordinance to council for your approval. One of Amherst's finest was deployed overseas this last year in the military and has safely returned to us for duty. I would like to thank him for serving our country and also welcome him back home at this time. Thank you. The police department would like to remind the residents to sign up for WENS, W-E-N-S. This is the wireless emergency notification system. During emergencies specific to your location, this system will notify you by calling your phone. More information can be found on the police department's website. The police department would also like to remind us in these times, if you see something, say something. Please call the police department if you see something unusual or suspicious in your neighborhood. The best way to keep our community safe is by all of us working together. The bond issue that funded the police department during its construction over these past many years is due to expire this year. This should reflect the savings on next year's real estate taxes as the debt to build the police station will be paid off. Quite an accomplishment. The fire department provides exceptional emergency response services due in large part to its fine personnel and the equipment they use. The fire department facilities and equipment are all kept up to date and maintained solely through the funding of a tax levy that was renewed last year. I want to sincerely thank everyone for supporting this fire levy so that the fire department may continue to provide the best emergency response services possible. Every 5 years, ISO, the Insurance Services Offices, inspects our fire department. Their safety rating directly affects fire insurance rates for everyone in our city. This past year, we have worked very hard to improve our already good rating of a 5. All indicators appear that our rating may be lowered to a 4, which is very good news for all of us, but extremely good for our businesses. If our rating improves, I will be reaching out to all of our Amherst businesses to make them aware of this change so that they are able to reach out to their insurance carriers and seek to take advantage of these savings. Existing businesses are growing and new ones are coming to Amherst. In a prior State of the City, I asked, what can a mayor do to bring new businesses to our town? It made me think a lot, and what I've realized is how important our existing businesses are. I've been reaching out to major employers throughout the city, and many are showing signs of growth. In cooperation with University Hospital's Medical Center, everybody knows this Amherst Hospital here, we have developed the Amherst Medical Center Leadership Council. This is a group of community leaders, myself and University Hospital staff working together, ensuring the hospital continues to meet the needs of Amherst and address where we as a community need the hospital to be in the future. Norson Corporation has applied for building permits, and they're working on their buildings and their facility. Thereby, they will be bringing new jobs back to Amherst. I've recently toured Tyson Foods, which was formerly Pierre Foods, and discussed the possibility of their expanding and adding to their existing already 600 jobs that are already here in Amherst at that facility. The city has also formed a joint economic district with the township, and we have had our first board meeting. There are already talks of expanding the district into an area of already existing businesses within the township, meaning an immediate new tax base for Amherst. The building department had their busiest year in recent history. There was over 21, and let me say this again, $21 million in new construction, including 42 new homes in Amherst last year. To put that in perspective, that's 3 times more than in 2016, which in itself was a very good year. This year already, there have been 16 new home permits issued. Construction of the new pre-K through 3rd grade school will begin this year, and the renovation of the formal central school building is also slated to begin this year. This is showing a lot of promise that 2018 will be another good year for the building department and the city. There were 15 new businesses in Amherst last year. Our beautiful and historic downtown district is thriving. Downtown building occupancy is near 100%. The CIC, that's Community Improvement Corporation, is reviewing proposals seeking a developer to build a new building downtown and grow our historic district. There are plans to improve access to the parking lot south of the railroad tracks on Maple Avenue. That'll help our parking issues downtown. The city sidewalk repair program is well underway. Last year, every sidewalk in the city was evaluated, and letters were sent out to addresses where repairs were recommended. Bids will go out soon for up to $500,000 in repairs, and some residents will receive letters informing them of the necessity to make repairs according to ordinance. I expect this to be a 5-year program to completion. There is a webpage dedicated to this program on the city's website. I'm asking that property owners call the building department or check that website for any questions. The city's technology upgrade is well underway. The connectivity will soon be complete. Most employees have received initial training of the new phones and have been a big part, I mean a big part in the planning and setup of this new system. Last year, the city developed the new IT department. This department is doing a great job coordinating this large project and keeping it on time and under budget. The IT department has been funded with overhead allocations, which is in the budget that was just passed. Each department is to pay its fair share of that IT department. Within this department's budgets are plans to keep all the city's technology up to date with the latest hardware, software, and security. As I said earlier, the state of our city is strong. By continuing to work together, Amherst will remain the place where we all want to live, run our business, and that we are all proud to call our hometown. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President, and the report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Calgar.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the reports of the administration.
Mr. Miller.
Second with comment.
Okay. You may comment.
Thank you. Oh, and happy birthday, not to you,
Cheryl.
to Cheryl. So
By the way, I will not be planning the state of the city, the budget on my wife's birthday again. So I'm hoping her birthday doesn't fall on a Monday in the next 5
And to
or
stay in
6
her good
years.
graces, I'll just say thank you and put an end to it so you can get home.
Thank
So, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's no
Thank you
further
very much.
comments.
Mr. Auditor, I mean Treasurer.
It's okay. I have, the answer to your question is it was Franklin County Common Police Court, and I forwarded to Olga the copy of the decision, and so maybe
I'd be
she'll forward
curious
that out
to-
to everybody, so you
Thank
guys
you.
can all read that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's a motion and a second to accept the reports of the administration. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Mr. Dembinski.
Move to adjourn.
Mr. Winarski.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. We are adjourned 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thanks. Appreciate you guys being here. I really appreciate it.
See you.